Pooh's back. And Brenda looks kind of jealous. Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, willy-nilly, silly old stuffed with fluff. He's Winnie the Pooh. Hope that doesn't get copyrighted. I hope it doesn't either. And with Pooh, that means I'm going to have several different Winnie the Pooh quotes throughout this video because I'm me and I now associate Kuma with Winnie the Pooh because of Oda and my Disney brain. And I have found some other Winnie the Pooh quotes that are kind of applicable to some of the things that are happening in the manga right now and will eventually be gotten to in the anime. So Pooh's going to go over here for now. You can rest off screen. You're fine. Please don't do the clicking thing. The clicking thing is not helpful. Okay. So, since the chapter leaked, I'm doing the chapter review. I was supposed to put up the Lolopechka video for the Heart Kingdom, but that's going to get moved to next week. So, I'll be adjusting that later. But I have this for today because the chapter is out for 1103. Okay, so this was supposed to be the first chapter of next year, so we have like the cover of Shonen Jump as part of it, and the cover has a bunch of the different protagonists from the different manga that are running at the moment that are all of them are dressed as dragons. They all kind of look like they're wearing variations of like Shenron's outfit from Dragon Ball. Not that I know exceedingly a lot about Shenron himself, but they all kind of look like they're wearing various versions of either that or just other kind of funny versions of dragon outfits. Like we see Izuku here in the background. I'm sure Asta is here somewhere, but I'm not spotting him directly. And there's a bunch of other ones that I'm just not super familiar with for the characters. But we got Luffy front and center and everything for One Piece. I don't know if this is supposed to be because this coming year is the year of the dragon or not. I'm not sure. I don't have those memorized. But in regards to the actual chapter art for the cover page, we have a big, it looks like the Straw Hats and Yamato are having a big celebration because they're all eating and drinking and cheering, and they all look like they're wearing... Momo is also there in the background. Is Hiyori here? Because we got Yamato and Momo. You would think they would put Hiyori in the background too, as she's kind of part of that whole dragon setup. But, Yamato is the daughter of a dragon, and Momo turns into a dragon, so yeah. But it looks like all of the Straw Hats all have like different dragon themes, something or the other. Frankie's hair is dragon theme, I think. Several of them have like dragons on their shirts, so... I'm assuming there's supposed to be something to do with that, with like the year of the dragon, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Again, I don't have that memorized. Into the actual chapter, which is called I'm So Sorry, Daddy. Oh, good God. Oda, will you stop it with the heartstrings for a little bit? No. I figured I'd ask. The chapter starts out kind of just after where we left off in the last chapter, where Bonnie has finished seeing all of the memories and the memory bubble, and she's come out of the paw room and everything, and she's had a slight bit of time to like process some of this. And we also see that in regards to the timeline of this, in regards to last night at Egghead Island, is that Bonnie gets out of the paw room around the same time that Vegapunk has been saved from York by the Straw Hats. And that means that like the Seraphim have been captured and all that stuff. So Vegapunk has been freed, has been saved from York, and we see that Vegapunk and Bonnie are talking. And Vegapunk is like, Bonnie, you saw everything? And she has reverted to... Okay, so it kind of looks like she's in her adult form, but then she does turn into her child form. Because like we saw her crying at the end of last chapter, that she was crying and she was in her adult form. So she's crying and she's like, I did. And Vegapunk's like, now I've really done it. I broke my promise to Kuma. And he's like panting because he probably ran back here as soon as he was out of where York had captured him, where York had been holding him down in the Devil Fruit testing area, along with the Cypher Pull agents and everything like that. I don't know if the Cypher Pull agents are going to end up doing anything that's going to be helpful in the arc. Now that they've been freed, they kind of have seen that, like, okay, well, the Straw Hats gave us food and they gave us water and everything like that. They didn't, like, keep us locked in here. They weren't the ones that locked us in here in the first place. So maybe that'll be something that happens, but I don't know if they've managed to have been released yet or not, because I don't know if the Seraphim have managed to be released or not out of their bubbles. And Kaku is still, as far as we're trapped in his bubble in the corner. But we see that Vegapunk probably ran here as soon as he got out of there because he wants to find out what happened with Bonnie and see how she's reacting. And he gets there and we just see that she just like runs up to him in her, her child form, her like 12-year-old form that would be her natural age, and she hugs him and she's like, I'm sorry, Vegapunk, and she's just crying. And it is like, she kind of sees Vegapunk a little bit like her grandpa figure at this point in time. I mean, like, she had Bulldog and Connie that kind of were like, like a grandma and a great grandma, or a grandpa and a great grandma type of a thing, and everything. I hope Bonnie gets Connie's hat back at some point in time. But just it's a cute hat and it's adorable because it keeps that connection that she has to the Sorbet Kingdom. But we see that Bonnie is just crying and Vegapunk is like comforting her, and she's calmed down, and he's like, I have a gift for you from Kuma, left me for your 10th birthday. And she's like, Friend Daddy, that's great. And she's just like so happy. So it's just like the whole thing where like kids can flip 180s very quickly with their emotions. And he gives her this beautiful sapphire sun necklace. So Bonnie's just looking it over and she's like, it's very pretty and it looks like the sun. I'll treasure it forever. And it has like this little sapphire, crystal in the middle that is of course reminiscent of her sapphire scales. And it also has like, it just is shaped like a sun, so that's a representation of both of them having their faith in the sun god Nika, so that's that represented there, and everything. So it's just like, so Bonnie now has this new necklace. I don't think we've seen her wearing it yet, so there's the possibility it's just like under her clothes at the moment. But it's a very pretty necklace, and I'm not going to be surprised if this gets turned into some form of a merchandising thing. And Kuma's like, he says it's a protective charm. Honestly, though, it's hard to believe what that kid has become after only 2 years. And they're referring to Straw Hat, or Vegapunk's referring to Straw Hat, and they're just like sitting and talking right now after Vegapunk gave her the necklace outside the Paw Room. And she's just like, Straw Hat? So he's the son of Dad's old buddy, right? And Vegapunk's like, indeed, I was stunned when you both showed up together. Fate is a strange thing. Yes, that's very true. Fate is a strange thing. And he's like, a lot has happened on Egghead while you've been in that room. The Straw Hat crew saved me just now, in fact. I'll explain everything. We can meet up with them when things have calmed down. So yeah, this is taking place after they've dealt with York and have her captured and everything like that. And we're kind of, it's overlapping where, like, I think it's supposed to be Vegapunk is telling Bonnie some of the stuff that happened while she was in the Paw Room, and then Bonnie is hearing her father's kind of monologue, Vegapunk is telling Bonnie, and he's explaining what had happened, and he's kind of giving her his side of like his apology of what happened, and he's like, I'm sorry for everything, Bonnie. Now you know how worthless I am, a mere scientist for hire following his orders. You're wrong. And she goes like, you're wrong. The real villain is him. And we cut back to where we left off when we finally went into the flashback, and are back to where before the flashback, so back to where Saturn in his demonic spider form is holding Bonnie up, and has a bunch of different Marines, aiming up at her to blow her head off. And we see, Luffy is still passed out on the side. Frankie, Sanji, Vegapunk, and Atlas are all down there, and they're all kind of like they still can't move and everything. So we've cut back to the present on Egghead Island. And, Saturn is like, Jewelry Bonnie the pirate, your father Kuma is truly dead. And, Sanji is like, well, what is going on? Why can't I move? And, Bonnie and, Frankie wants to go and help Bonnie and everything. And Luffy is kind of not passed off, but he's like, shriveled up on the side, like, food, someone give me food, meat. And Atlas is like, I would if I could, but my body, it's like, it just won't move. Again, it's like, we haven't had this force quite explained to us yet. There's the whole question of, is this some type of a hockey ability that Saturn has? It is like a form of Conqueror's hockey that just exerts his hockey so much that they can't even move. Is this something to do with his devil fruit power? Not exactly sure at this point in time. And we see, we get a radio or a snail transmission, and it's like, Vegapunk's bodyguard is in custody. I repeat, we've got Sentomaru, so Sentomaru has been captured, and then we see Kizaru, and he's still kind of not passed out, but, kind of still very weak and trying to recover over on the ground. And he's like, Sentomaru-kun, Bonnie? And I'm hoping this is supposed to be something where it's showing maybe Sentomaru is, or not Sentomaru, maybe Kizaru, I don't know. Maybe he's going to have second thoughts about what he's seeing, about the choices he's been forced to make as an admiral for the Marines, as this cog in the machine. But I don't know. We'll find out. And we're getting more transmission, and I think it's supposed to be like cutting around the world, because like since Morgans is able to listen in on what's going on at Egghead Island, he is printing papers and sending them out at the moment, so people around the world are reading about what's going on. And it's any word on the status of things up there, so they're referring to up in the Punk records in the dome, and they're like, no, we can't confirm anything, because like none of the other CP0 agents are answering them. Like Lucci's probably still battling Zoro at this point in time. Kaku is still trapped in the bubble. The other Cypher Pull agents are still down in the Devil Fruit experimentation area, I guess. And Stussy is not going to be responding to them because she's on the side of Vegapunk. And she's also injured the last time we saw her, so she's hopefully being treated for that by like Nami and Usopp and whoever else was there. And hopefully Robin's getting treated too for whatever happened with her. And everything, and we're cutting around the world where we see it like a snowy country, and they're just like, this is ridiculous as to what's going on, how many casualties are there going to be? There's an emperor involved in this. And we cut to what looks more like a tropical island, and I don't know if we've seen any of these people before, but they're just like, they're just like reading about what's going on. They're just, please be safe, Dr. Vegapunk, and everything like that. And then we cut to Kamabaka Kingdom, Kamabaka Island, where we see Dragon and Ivankov talking, and they're just like, Dragon's like, assuming there's still a trace of Kuma in there, where would his instincts take him, Eva? And Ivankov's just like, well, if it was me, I would storm the Marie Joie for some payback. And Dragon's like, but as we know, Kuma is different. Because, yeah, it's like, okay, we thought that, when Kuma was climbing the red line, maybe he was going to go to Marie's One and just cause as much damage there as he could, but then he left after dealing with Akainu, or after he was able to get away from Akainu, he left, and we are going to see where he ended up at the end of this chapter. Spoiler alert, anybody that thought he was going to Egghead Island, which I was correct, was me, and was so many other people that are just like, he's going to Egghead Island. Yep, and that's where he ends up very shortly. And we cut back to Egghead Island, where we see Bonnie, and she's like kind of like looking around, and she's like kind of managed to muster up a little bit more of that Gryffindor courage. I would say Bonnie definitely qualifies to be in Gryffindor, by the way. She's she didn't let having the sapphire scales get her down. She went out to sea to go and find her father. She's been very brave over the last 2 years, having to be on her own and everything like that. She tried to stab the giant evil spider dude. That is the reason for so much of the suffering of not just her, but her father and her mother and so many, countless of other people around the world for possibly so many different generations. And everything. So, so Bonnie, I would say, could go be in Gryffindor. Same thing with Luffy. They would get along great, and I get a little bit of a hint of that. But Bonnie is like, if I'm going to get killed here anyway, then distorted future, Nika-ish, and we see her, okay, so the question that I have with this is like, okay, so we know, so Bonnie does very similar to what we saw when she knocked out Alpha, where she, powers up one of her fists, and, she gets big and bulky and strong and everything like that, and she's going to punch Saturn is what it's going to be, or is what she's attempting to do. And what I'm assuming is, because since she's wearing like the black gloves and the black part of her suit, well, I think it's designed to be pink. I think is what they've showed, that it's supposed to be like a dark pink or something like that. I don't remember if we've gotten Bonnie's color scheme for Egghead Island off the top of my head, but so it has this appearance of it being like when Luffy hockeys up his fists and everything like that for like gear third and everything. For gear fourth and everything, but it's not that, it's just her gloves and everything like that, although I guess there's a possibility Bonnie does have hockey, but that hasn't been explained yet one way or the other. And she's getting ready to try to punch Saturn and everything, and he's just like, Nika? And she's like, future, and she tries punching him, and it just kind of bounces off of him, like it just kind of barely even grazes his head. And she's like, because I think it's supposed to be that it bent her arm in the wrong direction. I don't think her arm is broken, but it's definitely hurting. And she's like, what the? I suddenly feel weak again. Why? Is what she's thinking in her head. And Saturn is like, so, you know that name. You really are his daughter. That being said, you don't fully understand its meaning. And Bonnie and in his head, he's thinking, it seems she hasn't drawn the conclusion between Nika and the Straw Hat's new white form. And he's saying, and then he says, how pathetic. And we look over, and we get like this tiny panel where we look over, and then we look over again, and it's more, and it's Luffy is like stuffing his face with food that popped up out of nowhere. So many people are going to jump to, this is Caribou. He did this because Caribou doesn't want to deal with this big thing either. So he just like plopped a bunch of food in front of Luffy or something like that. And then he skedaddled away while Luffy stuffs himself. Very similar to, what happened on Wano when, Caribou showed up there. That's going to be one possibility. The other possibility is, I don't know, maybe there's one of the machines nearby that makes food, and maybe it heard Luffy saying stuff about food and it popped out a bunch of this food. I don't know, but somehow Luffy has food. Maybe someone else did something. I don't know, I don't know. I don't think we see Atlas during any of this part, so I guess there's a possibility that Atlas did something, but how Atlas could have managed to get away, I don't know. Trying to think of who would have been able to do this, and I'm like, the only ones I can think of is that it was Caribou, as slimy and disgusting as he is, and possibly, or something else, but I don't know what that would be, and everything. It's not Kizaru. Kizaru didn't do anything, because Kizaru is still sitting over here on the ground. We see Kizaru in a second, and he seems just as confused as everybody else. But Luffy has food, so Luffy's stuffing his face, and Saturn's like, where did that food come from? How... Who is responsible for this? Put him in sea stone cuffs immediately. And, the rest of the Marines are very confused, and they're all trying to figure out what's going on. So they're like, get him, and they're trying to stop him. And Kizaru is just kind of like, huh? So Kizaru didn't do anything. He's confused. I guess there's a possibility that if the Blackbeard pirates are on the island, if any of the Blackbeard pirates are on the island, maybe they made a bunch of food show up there somehow and did something. I don't know. But why they would, well, I mean, I guess if the Blackbeard pirates are there, I guess it would make more sense to try to have and Luffy fight the giant evil bull spider thing, than them doing it themselves. I guess that would make more sense. And then them trying to deal with him. But I don't think so. So we'll see what happens there. And Bonnie is just like, what's with this geezer? I can't even change his age. So it looks like she's trying to touch him to use her, her Toshi powers on him, or age powers on him, or her time, age, year, time, whatever it is, that she has to try to age him down, but it's not working. And Saturn, that's where we're going to get our explanation for Bonnie's fruit. And he's like, Bonnie, you owe that power of yours to me. We conducted experiments to determine whether extract infusions could grant a baby an ability without feeding them the fruit normally. And she's, Bonnie has this horrified look at her, looking at her own hand. She's like got this horrified look on her face. And Saturn is like, it was a success, but the fruit itself is useless now. Its ability can transform you into a state that matches any future perceived to be possible. But that means the possibilities become limited as your future becomes more certain, as you uncover the truth. And a lot of us kind of thought this anyway when it was coming, like trying to explain Bonnie's devil fruit. It was like she can access these distorted futures and stuff like that, not just for herself, but for other people, because we saw her do like the distorted futures for Luffy and Chopper, with them being like wrinkled and, withered and old and everything like that. And her doing the different distorted futures on herself that we've seen. And there was the whole concept of like, oh, well, she can, tap into these different possibilities, like tap into the multiverse type thing. Like, what if I was Nika-esque? What if I was, a big, strong buccaneer like my dad? What if I was this, or what if I was that? And all of that stuff. So we're kind of getting a little bit of that. And for Saturn, who, if he did manage to have this devil fruit at some point in time in someone, that would have been an experimentation subject. He is the godhead of science. It would make sense that he would do lots of experiments with devil fruits himself over the, decades, centuries, whatever, that he's been alive. And, that he would have had all of these experiments that he was trying based on different, other types of scientific advancements that would have been made within the world and with Vegapunk and everything like that, and then using that technology to further his own experiments and everything. So we see him explaining that, and it's just like, yeah, we kind of had the thought that like the more set in stone Bonnie's, that like when you're a child there's infinite possibilities, and then as you get older those possibilities kind of seem to become less and less likely over time. So I think that's one of the things that they're trying to hint at there and stuff. And we see this panel where it is like something incoming into Egghead Island, and it is Kuma. And we have Saturn saying, Nika is just an impossible myth you wanted to believe in. And we have Bonnie yelling, Nika's real. I've been looking for him to save Dad ever since you turned him into your cyborg slave. And we see Kuma incoming toward the island. And Saturn is like, yet your sudden weakening proves you are starting to doubt whether his existence is possible. Your father just passed on a worthless buccaneer legend. He once told me he wanted to save people just like Nika. And we see Saturn holding up Bonnie, and then we also cut to where we have, the bit of the flashback that we saw that was Kuma standing up to Saturn on God Valley, 38 years ago, when Kuma is standing up to Saturn and saying, who are you? Are you someone important or whatever? Yeah, no, Saturn didn't forget about that. He was well aware that was Kuma. And he's like, your mother being brought to the Holy Land to be wife number 8 is ironic, really. She ended up being part of my drug experiments. Like the other failures, she developed sapphire scale. I knew the results were poor, but to think the condition passed on to her child as well. And so, for all intents and purposes, I think this is supposed to be confirming that when Ginny was brought to, Marie Joie, all those years ago, 14 years ago, because she was there for about 2 years, and Bonnie's 12. So about 13 and a half, 14 years ago, when Ginny was brought there, that she was brought there to Saturn. Whether or not that was he specifically wanted her because he knew that she had a connection to Kuma is a little bit left up for debate, because he may not have known that she specifically had been a former slave that had escaped with Kuma, but I'm not sure on that one. We haven't gotten the exact answer on that one yet. We may never quite get it 100%, but he's basically confirming that she was brought there and that she was wife number 8. I'm assuming that's supposed to be she was his wife number 8. And he used her along with his other wives that were, for all intents and purposes, sex slaves, unfortunately, and did his experimentation on them, and probably let other celestial dragons have fun with them as long as they didn't interfere with his experiment and everything like that, which just makes it even worse. Not that it was very good to begin with, but it just makes it even worse. And she contracted sapphire scales. Eventually she did end up pregnant with Bonnie, and then eventually Ginny ended up getting being able to leave because she was cast aside because she was deemed worthless. Now, whether this means that when Ginny was pregnant with Bonnie, that Saturn knew that she was pregnant, and he probably would have known that she was pregnant when he was experimenting on her to try to do like some form of the devil fruit transfusions to try to give, I guess they were trying to give Ginny the power from the devil fruit without her actually eating it. Kind of like, I guess, a very basic rudimentary version of like the green blood that's in the seraphim. But trying to give the power to Ginny without her actually eating the devil fruit, because maybe they just, they're sick, twisted Fs. Many different levels. Very well showcased here. Yeah. It's like, if Oda's going to take his time to try to do something like this with every single one of the other 4 remaining Gorosei, you're just going to make us more and more angry at them to begin with. Not that we're not already angry with them. It's just like, yeah, let's make all of them just extra sick and twisted, and let's showcase this more. I don't think that's necessary. We could just imply that we don't like this one and multiply it by 4, and we'll be good. And that'll cover all of them. And so we're seeing all of this, and so I guess it is kind of confirming that Saturn is Bonnie's father, I guess, her biological father, not her actual father who raised her. That is, for all and purposes and all, forever and forever will be Kuma as Bonnie's father. That is not changing. But Saturn is somewhere involved in this. And Bonnie is just somewhat confused by what he said. And she's like, what? And then we see this giant explosion and crash outside on the outskirts of the island, where we see all the marine ships. And, something like flew into the island and, crash landed. And they're just like, something over there. Something landed over there. And we cut back to Bonnie, and she's starting to cry again. And she's just like, everything. It was you? And it's, this whole thing, it's just like, she's seen everything from her father's perspective, but that means that she only knows what he knew. So, Kuma and Dragon and Ivankov never knew who it was. What specific celestial dragon it was that wanted Ginny. It was Saturn. It was Saturn that wanted Ginny. So it's like, you're the reason behind so much of this. And because she has her father's, because she looked through her father's memories, she knows that her father was the one that stood up to, Saturn on, God Valley all those years ago and everything. So it's just like, all of this is just some twisted, effed up way for Saturn to get revenge on Kuma
and
torture Kuma even further over a long period of time in order simply because Kuma stood up to him as a child and said, "Are you important? I don't care who you are," basically. So if you want something that demonstrates the amount of ego that the not just the celestial dragons have, but that the Gorosei have, that'll work right there. For how much their ego is very large, but very sensitive. It can be very easily popped. It's like, yeah, if you're what is it? It's the quote from I think it's from the second Hunger Games movie. Now, bear in mind, I've only seen the Hunger Games movies. I have not read any of the books, but there's the moment in the second Hunger Games movie where Katniss is kind of talking with Snow, and she's like, your whole system must be very fragile if it can be brought down by just a few berries. For when, her and Peeta were willing to just end it there in the games and everything like that, so that way Snow wouldn't have his winner. So it's like, yeah, your system must be very fragile if it can be brought down by just a few berries. And it's like, in this case, it's like, your ego must be exceedingly fragile if it can be brought down just by one boy saying that he doesn't know who you are and wanting to try to be a better person than you will ever be, type of a thing. So, got that there. And we see Vegapunk is, of course, there witnessing all of this. Luffy's off to the side, probably still stuffing his face. Atlas is there, as well as is Sanji and Frankie are there. And Vegapunk is yelling, and this is, I think, the first time that we've seen Vegapunk get the type of angry that he's been in the past. We haven't seen him really get this angry since some of the flashback stuff that we saw, but he gets very angry and he's like, "Experiments? How dare you, Saturn? Those sapphire scales tore Kuma's family apart. They're the reason he threw his life away. You used it as a bargaining chip when you were the one responsible." And then we cut back to Saturn, and of course he's like, "Look at it from my perspective. Do you comprehend the feelings of the insects you step on? Of course not." And of course, this is just a callback to where we have him mentioning, the Marines are expendable, the lower Marines are expendable and easily replaced. I do not, an elephant does not, concern itself with the worries of an ant, type of a thing. It's, he does not care. And we just see Bonnie crying even more and horrified by that statement. And we cut to where we see that, yes, Kuma is the thing that landed on the island. And they're like, "It's a pacifista." "No, look, his palms. He has paws." And so it's like they're realizing that it is Kuma, the original PX-0 and everything like that. And, one of the Marines is on the Den Mushi, and he's, yelling, calling back, informing everybody on the island what's going on. It's just like, "This is an urgent report from the southwest coast. The ex-warlord of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma, has made landfall. He's heading straight for the center of the island. Our authority chip commands aren't working. We can't stop him." And Saturn is just like, "What a fiasco. How could Kuma possibly be here?" So this means that Saturn was unaware of the fact that Kuma had been climbing the red line, and that Kuma had made his way into Marie Joie, and kind of through Marie Joie, fought Akainu, managed to escape, and has now been flying even further to try to get to Egghead Island. So it means that Saturn was either unaware of what was going on, or he just assumed that it would be handled by Akainu the last time he was informed of what was going on. Because he's been on the island for, I don't know, a little bit, and he was, dealing with what was going on in the island, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. And we see Bonnie, and she's just like, she looks like she's crying, and it looks like she's just kind of barely holding on to consciousness, and she's like, "I can't hold on, I'm so scared." No one blames you, Bonnie, for that. And Vegapunk is just like, "He's here? How?" And so we see Kuma running through, and he's just getting shot at and shot at and shot at. By the way, for some reason, I googled last night how many or how many shots it can take to take down a bear. The answer was like 6 to 13, I guess, depending on what kind of rounds you're using and where you're shooting the bear. So it can take a lot to take down a bear. Add that at being a mother bear trying to protect her cubs, and you're in a lot of trouble. Or in this case, a father bear. By the way, in actual bears, father bears really have no part in raising the cubs or taking care of their mate. They're there for the mating and then they leave. And then I guess they show back up again at some point in time and have fun with the female again after all the cubs are gone. But they're not part of the upbringing of the cubs. But Kuma is very much embodying that mother bear type of instinct of must protect cub type of thing. And Bonnie is just like, I can't, she's inside again, inner monologue. I can't force myself to speak anymore. Daddy, it feels like my heart is shattering. And we're seeing all of this, we're hearing Bonnie say all of this as we see Kuma running through and getting shot at and hitting hit with, huge amounts of ammo and stuff like that. Stumbling, getting back up, being knocked down, getting back up again, running even more and more and more and everything like that in order to try to get to where Bonnie is. Now, as we're aware, at this point in time, Kuma, for all intents and purposes, as it was shown in the last chapter, Kuma is basically dead. Any part of his individuality, his ego, anything like that is gone. And any of the memories were stuck inside of the paw bubble. Vegapunk had erased all of them from the actual Kuma. So Kuma is the shell, but there's still something deep inside of him that is causing him to show up here, whether this is some form of inlane programming that Vegapunk had him put in there, some subroutine, whatever, we don't know, but there's something in Kuma that is making him keep going. And they're just, open fire, bring him down, don't stop until you've run out of ammo and everything like that. And Bonnie is just like, at this point, I think I'd be better off dead. This is it. And Bonnie is, she's crying even more now, and she's like screaming about this. And we see Sanji is screaming, I guess, trying to fight against whatever force it is that's holding him back. We see Vegapunk as well. And she's like, I'm so sorry, Daddy. And Kuma is running through more and more and more. And Saturn is just like, all that shrieking is unbearably noisy. You insufferable waif. And he starts, I'm assuming he's trying to, squeeze her. And he's, blow her head off, holding her up so everyone can fire at her. And then we see Kuma, with, where we get the close-up where we see him using his targeting system. And he seems to blow away the two sets of the Marines that are on either side of where Saturn is, holding up Bonnie. And Saturn, whether he's distracted and he does this on purpose or whatever, but he seems to kind of either throw or no, it looks like he's just kind of thrown / dropped Bonnie onto the ground, which is still falling from a decent height, with force added him if he's throwing her down. And he's lifting up and I missed this the first time I was reading the chapter, he lifts up one of his feet that has, the spikes on it like spider legs do, and he's getting ready to stab Bonnie. And Bonnie is thinking, I'm so sorry, Daddy. You fought really hard for me to live, but... And we see Kuma show up, and he's stopped. He jumps between Bonnie and the paw, or not Bonnie and the paw, Bonnie and the stabbing thing, and it looks like he's actually picked... Okay. I can't tell if he's picked Bonnie up, or if she's still on the ground. I think he picked her up and he's holding her to his chest, and the spider leg is with the spike on it has come down on Kuma's back, so it's stopped and Bonnie is safe in Kuma's arm or Kuma's hand, and she's just like, Daddy, and Kuma just has the blank, cyborg look on his face that he has. And everybody's just like, it's Bartholomew Kuma! And they're just all freaking out, which I don't blame them. And Kuma pulls the spider leg spike out of his back, turns toward turns toward Saturn. I think he set Bonnie down. And he's just rearing back his fist to punch Saturn. And this is where we get this will be a break. So this chapter was supposed to come out the first weekend of January, or the first week of January, but it got leaked, so the official won't come out until then, and then we'll have Not a week break then, but now we have a week break between now and when the next chapter comes out. So there's still a week break somewhere in there. 2-week break somewhere in there. But Saturn actually looks kind of scared, given the fist that is coming at him. So Saturn looks a little bit scared. And the little editor's note is like, a father's fury. And so, I mean, so many of us were like, okay, well, the Baha bubble can get put into the Seraphim Kuma, the S bear, and then it can be, it can have Kuma's memories, and it can try to protect Bonnie, or maybe there's a subroutine in that one to try to protect Bonnie. Maybe there's just something in this where Oda is trying to just make this comment, or this, this statement that, between Vegapunk, well, Vegapunk didn't want to do anything to affect Kuma's mind. He didn't want to, do any of that type of stuff to Kuma. Saturn was the one that made him do it. And I think it's supposed to be this concept that maybe there's this concept of like, what is greater, man or machine, in regards to like programming, and like maybe there is still something inside of Kuma that is enough humanity left that makes it that he wants to protect his daughter, that he did all of this to try to protect Bonnie in the first place, to try to find her a cure, and to then try to keep her safe and everything like that. And that she just that he has all of this, and maybe there's still something in there that is just trying to say that you can try to erase as much of that and put in as much programming as you want, but there still is going to be something of humanity left inside of Kuma, inside of this machine that was this living thing that you turned into a machine. Because I mean, we see Frankie all the time with the Straw Hats, and while he is a cyborg, he doesn't really have these types of subroutines and stuff like that that Kuma has. Or we've seen a few other cyborgs, and even like the cybernetic animals that were on Karakuri Island, where Frankie interacted with them. Even those weren't exactly, they still had the instincts of an animal. And even the even at the beginning of this arc, where we're introduced to the sea beasts that have been turned into cyborgs and stuff like that, and Lilith's like, yeah, we still can't get rid of everything. There's still that animal instinct in there regardless of what we do. And I think that was supposed to be a hint there that like Kuma's animal instinct is to protect. And in his case, the last thing that he has in his life that he wants to protect is Bonnie. And she's the reason he made those decisions. Ever since she was born, he would always come back to Sorbet and take care of her. He would always do all of that. Yes, he would go off and be a revolutionary, but he would come back to her and he would be her daddy. And then as soon as he found out she was sick, he stopped being a revolutionary, and he spent however much time he could with her, trying to get hold of any doctor he could to try to find out what was going on with her and try to find a cure. And then he yes, he fought Bakori and everything like that, but it was all in an effort to try to protect Bonnie. And then he leaves the kingdom to go and try to find a cure, and also to keep the kingdom safe. He goes to try to find a cure, and he makes the deal with Vegapunk eventually to, and Saturn to, do this and become this, robot cyborg slave, all in an effort to protect Bonnie, to save Bonnie so she can have the life that he knows she deserves to have. And I've got the Winnie the Pooh quotes, so I'm going into them now. And, as I keep pointing this out with Kuma, it's, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Kuma is so brave. And while he may be this pacifist that doesn't like fighting and just wants to run away at times, he fights, and he keeps fighting, and he protects people. And he doesn't fight for the love of fighting. He fights because he wants to protect people. And another one is, some people care too much. I think it's called love. It hurts to keep looking for sunshine. Oh no, excuse me. It never hurts. Never hurts to keep looking for sunshine. Um, the title I had for this chapter is Fading Faith or Flourishing, because with Bonnie, it's, you know, maybe she is slightly fumbling in whether or not she still wants to believe in Nika and everything like that. And while she does have all of Kuma's memories, and Kuma may have managed to put together some bits of Luffy having this connection to Nika, he may not have made the 100% connection that Luffy has the power of Nika. He may not have known that yet, because while he had seen Luffy act the way, the way that Luffy was acting and everything like that, and that is a very Nika-esque way of acting, it's not exactly like he saw him transform into his sun god form and hear the drums of liberation. He hasn't seen that yet. Bonnie has seen the poster, but she hasn't been fully around Luffy and being able to focus on him when her own life wasn't in danger and she wasn't trying to stab a giant evil spider bull. And she, hasn't really had the ability to connect the dots yet, maybe. She's had a lot going on with her the last couple of days, the last several hours. So maybe she hasn't quite fully made that connection yet. But maybe something will happen, like if Luffy gets his power back up and going and he starts, using, doing, the drums of liberation again, maybe Bonnie will actually hear that and she will finally make that connection. And that will just fully, and it's not that she is going to then start worshiping Luffy. That's not what it is, because Luffy wouldn't want her to do that anyway. But I think it might be something where she's going to be realizing that all those stories that my dad told me were true. There is the god of liberation. There is Nika. And now his kind of representation at the moment is with Luffy. And maybe I'm going to put my faith in Luffy, but it's her faith is this carrying on of her father's faith. Of his faith in the sun god, of everything that he's done and seen and everything like that. So we see that. What were some of the other ones that I found? I found a bunch of quotes last night that were very applicable to stuff that's going on in this chapter or with Kuma in general. One of the other ones that I found was, if there ever comes a day when we can't be together, keep me in your heart. I'll stay there forever. And, Bonnie is now kind of having this moment where she might be able to at least somewhat have this sense that maybe there's something in Kuma that remembers her, or there's something in there that is still connecting them. And it might be able to be where she can finally say goodbye to him or thank him in person for everything that he's done for her, even though she didn't 100% know that that was the case. All these sacrifices that he made for her in order for her to have the best future possible, and everything. And she knows via his memories, and I mean, like, she knew that her father loved her anyway and everything like that, but now she fully knows the extent to how much he went through to try to protect her. And we've seen other fathers in One Piece that go through so much to try to protect not just their daughters, but their children and stuff like that. And we've also seen mothers in One Piece go through that as well. And I think parts of this are a little bit of a love letter for Oda to his daughters, for them to see that, like, yes, Oda himself goes through so much when he's writing all of these chapters and designing the story and everything like that. And yeah, it kind of keeps him away from them, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't love spending the time with them when he can, and doesn't mean that he loves them any less. And that, I am quite certain that at whatever point in time One Piece is just done, I would not be surprised if he just has, like, the last piece of the last page being like this dedication to his wife and daughters. And all of that for, like, just like, thank you for, being beside me as I write this story, and now I'm going to go and I'm just going to spend the rest of my life spoiling my daughters and making up for the lost time. That would not surprise me in the slightest if that ends up being what Oda does when he's done with One Piece. It's just, I'm just going to go spoil my daughters. because they deserve it. I'm gonna take them. I'm gonna, we're going to Disneyland. Whatever you want to go with there. So there's so many quotes from Winnie the Pooh actually that are actually just rather applicable to life in general, but also just like applicable to some of the stuff that's going on here. But I've been rambling for a while, so that's what I have here. Probably next chapter is going to involve us seeing like the result of Kuma punching Saturn, hopefully doing some form of damage. Kuma's had all of this accumulated damage. He can always pull it out of himself and force it into Saturn, pull out the damage from Luffy and force it into Saturn, something along those lines. Could do something to where he acts as this distraction or this, immovable force obstacle type thing that Saturn has to get past, while he's able to distract Saturn, while the rest of, the Vegapunks and Straw Hats and everything like that are able to escape. And get back up the dome and everything like that. So, maybe there'll be something there that'll happen. And, Bonnie will, maybe Bonnie won't want to leave her dad, but maybe it's just like Frankie or, Sanji or something like has to like drag her away or something like that. We'll see. Maybe there'll be something else that'll happen. But I kind of think what they're trying to point out is like, as I said, way back at the beginning of this arc, we had it that they had the mechanized sea beasts. And Lilith is just like, yeah, we can't quite get them to stop following their instincts, and it's very frustrating when we're trying to program them. No matter what we do, we can't get them to stop following their instincts. They keep wanting to, attack other ships and destroy them and everything like that, and I can't salvage from any of it. And I think that's supposed to be a hint at the beginning of it that is now going on here, where we have Kuma, who has literally had everything of his humanity erased from him. Of humanity, his individuality, his ego, his anything that makes him himself erased from him. And he's just this shell that happens to have a devil fruit, has all of these different, mechanical augmentations and everything like that have been done to him. And yet there's still something in him that makes him keep defying in this point, that has drawn him back here to Egghead Island, to where Bonnie is, to attack this celestial dragon that is, this one that has kind of been like Kuma's bitter rival ever since Kuma was a kid, even though Kuma didn't know it at the time and everything like that. So, maybe there's just something there. So, that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I still have one more video that'll come out this year, and that'll be on New Year's Eve. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you come back next year to watch more. So, bye! Happy New Year!